ride in the bush, you'll be riding down a track and you'll come up to something that is like really beautiful, sort of like a clearing at the top of a mountain, and you look out over the parks and you'll just be like, oh wow, this is pretty nice.
Josh Formosa's been jumping on the trails ever since his dad taught him how to ride a trail bike 5 years ago. They still ride together whenever they can, but they're struggling to find places where they can escape into the bush and not be breaking the law. This year, the National Parks and Wildlife Service are cracking down on trail bike riders. You've got to be registered and licensed to ride in the parks, but most importantly, you have to be in the right place. Riders will be slammed with hefty on-the-spot fines and no warnings in an effort to stop the illegal activity. NPWS Ranger Chris Gallagher has the responsibility of inspecting the environmental damage trail bike riders cause when they're doing the wrong thing.
Especially on a bit of a slope, the water is caught in all of these sort of curves and tracks and starts eroding away, and suddenly becomes bigger and bigger, and you can actually really disrupt this whole sort of environment pretty easily by initially a very small track turning into a larger and larger track.
If riders are found on top of endangered flora or fauna, they can be fined up to $20,000 to $30,000. With a risk like this, why are trail bike riders still there? Don't they have anywhere else to go? You can pay to ride your trail bike on private property or in specially created bike parks, but it's a fee that's out of the price range of most young trail bikers. Clinton Jerd is an environmental specialist and trail bike delegate for the Motorcycle Council of New South Wales. He says any dirt track that isn't looked after will erode, and that if trail bikes weren't so noisy, they'd go largely unnoticed.
I mean, I think it's something that can be maintained and managed. It's just a matter of the, I guess the powers that be deciding they want to manage it rather than close areas and make it, I guess it's sort of like an illegal, irresponsible activity. It doesn't have to be.
The problem seems to be that most trail bike riders don't know how to do the right thing.
When you buy a trail bike, you're not handed a manual and told when you can ride and can't. And a lot of the places I've ridden in national parks, like they might have a sign when you're entering the parks, but after that point, trails that are like leading off the main dirt roads aren't clearly signed. They're sort of they look like kangaroo tracks that you could take sometimes.
Trail bike riders say they're demonised as environment-ruining hooligans. Some trail bike riders do the wrong thing, spraying marks on trees to map out a course, throwing away the rubbish and chopping down the trees in their way. But all parties agree it's a small group of bad riders creating a bad reputation for the rest of them. Victorian Government commissioned research found that the majority of trail bike riders cared about the environment, other park users or residents, and the noise they made.
It's not a simple case of, all dirt bikers are irresponsible and don't care what they're doing. It's the prominent minority. You don't know the guys that are doing the right thing, you don't see them.
Last year, the Victorian State Government recognised the legitimate use of public land by riders and put $5 million toward a trail bike initiative to try and make everyone happy. Michael Findlay is the director of a website full of trails that bikes can use. He started the website when he got sick and tired of not knowing where him and his friends could ride. He says the initiative was good on its merits, but they certainly haven't seen $5 million worth of change come out of it.
We're trying to get a lot more information out of the DSC and possibly pass that on to the trail bike riding community so that we can then try and, as a group, provide some alternative method to keep areas open, but also satisfy the issues that the controlling bodies have to rehabilitate the area.
Even though the Victorian initiative didn't nearly satisfy the trail bike riders, there's still been communication moving between the sides. It might have been a baby step, but it's a step that New South Wales hasn't taken. The Motorcycle Council of New South Wales says that it's the government's approaches of exclusion and enforcement that are making the problem worse. Clinton's call for better management seems to ring true with the rest of the community.
I think the way they've done in Victoria by giving them a bit of a grant and being able to put all that information out there is a good thing, because knowing where and where you can't ride is a big sort of question mark for most riders. It's an unknown, so yeah, it would be good to set up some sort of scheme to educate trail bike riders on what they can't do.
And when asked what needs to be done from the other end of the spectrum, it sounds like we're hearing double.
It'll be a combination of more awareness from the trail bikers on what they can and can't do through education, implementing law enforcement, probably the maintenance or the creation of specific or more user-friendly for trail bike tracks and trails that they can use and they know of.
Everyone seems to be saying the same thing. With a bit of education and communication, this problem could be solved. But the issue is still there, and so the question remains: when is New South Wales going to stop cutting corners and put up the revs on managing trail bikes?